I said that for 2021, for the most part, I think I was kind of at my best. I was doing a really good job with my art, I think, overall. Of course, there was space to improve, but for the most part, I think it was really solid. 2022 is a mix of that continuing, but maybe I'm projecting, but I do think I also started to decline in places, something that I think would get worse over the next few years. Let's just get into it, and I will show you my art from 2022. First piece of the year, Lucius and Ella, two characters from Calidus Chronicles. They haven't played big roles in the story yet, but they both appeared in volume 1. I kind of just wanted to draw Ella in what will eventually be one of her outfits in the story, and I really like how this one came out. Especially Ella. Her leg looks so good. And the way her thigh and her calf bend and me, I think I did a really good job with that. Also, just the design of like her boots and her outfit, sandals technically, and her outfit, I think I did a good job with that. My two Valentine's Day pieces, I originally intended to do 4 because I usually tend to do sets of 4 when it comes to art. That didn't happen, but I did do Bronwyn and Carolyn. Bronwyn is definitely the stronger of the two, but I think they both came out fairly well. And this was concept art for Calidus. At this point, I was starting to write volume 2, but this is the sign over Catherine's shop, which is called Cat's Boudoir. And so I'm really happy with how this came out. I think for the scroll work, I was specifically inspired by cookie designs that I was seeing. Okay, no, that's correct. There is a channel on YouTube called Yuyu's Sugar Art, and it's a Japanese cookie decorator who she did just these beautiful designs. I loved the scroll work she was able to create with frosting. And so I tried to recreate that in my art in a couple different cases. This one is Heather, a bit of concept art for how she's going to look in future books. This is where I start to feel like my art was declining. But at the same time, with this one, I've always focused on my issues with how I drew Heather. Maybe part of the reason Heather didn't come out better is because I spent all my time working on the Celtic knotwork on the counter that you can't even see. I had forgotten about it until I was putting this highlight reel together, and I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't include that. Looked at it closely, and I'm like, no, wait, I did all that work on the counter and making it look like the wood was actually carved with this knotwork. That's where all the effort for this piece went. No wonder it took so long. Okay, this was the first story cover of Calidus Chronicles Volume 2, where I finally got to introduce Madeline. Her face is a bit We're not going to focus on that though, because everything else looks pretty good, especially the little bird. I'm debating if this is better than what actually ended up becoming the Volume 2 cover. Speaking of, Madeline sticking around to be our Valentine pinup of 2022. So this was also when I started making a yearly watermark. So it doesn't include the exact date of when I drew it, which is something I might have to start including in my art again. But if you look down in the corner, you see a watermark that says Song W. Erickson 2022. Part of why I do that is just so even if someone posts my art somewhere else, it won't be easy to remove that mark. And in my own experience, there have been a number of artists who I've been able to, I'll find their stuff in the wild, really like it. And if they have a legible signature, or even sometimes a link that they put on the art, I'm able to trace it back to them, which is really convenient. And it's something I wish more artists would do. Having a signature is of course great, but if I can't read it, I can't use that to find the creator. But yeah, this one is cute. I think it's okay overall. The one I did the next year would be much better in 2023, but we'll get to that eventually. Oh, this was the first one where I went all in on Madeline and pink. And I remember my eyes hurt. after I finished drawing this, just because the pink was so bright on my computer screen. But I'm just gonna say it was totally worth it. This one, I was like, oh, I want to try drawing a sexy guy. I want to try drawing one of my male characters looking sexy. And so this one is Geralt. I won't go into too much detail. This one, I think there's good parts and there's bad parts. This one, okay, this one is just a sketch. I did this one completely without reference, and I think over the last 5-10 years especially, I have become overly dependent on reference. I think reference is really important for artists, and I don't think you should feel bad for using it, but I think I have just depended on it too much, and I think I need to get away from that a bit. But it's so weird, because I look at this piece, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, the angle of the hip is weird, the shoulders are wonky, the head is misshapen, but I still really like this one. And I don't know if it's because at some point I stopped doing illustrations that really convey a mood, and maybe it's because I got too hung up on the idea of making things attractive, and maybe it was too much influence from pinup, and maybe this is just the only thing I've done in a while that really has a mood to it, and maybe that's something I need to work on getting back to. But yeah, even despite all the flaws, this one, I still really like this one. I've never gone back to color it, and I think it does need a lot of work to fix it up, but I still really like it. I say all that, and then I skip to the best pinup I've ever done, which was a study of a Gil Elvgren painting, because Gil Elvgren was the greatest of the pinup artists, in my opinion. Do not get me started on how his legacy has been mishandled. But yeah, I did a study of a Gil Elvgren painting. Of course, I did it as Runa. I love how this one came out. It's the best I've ever drawn her face. Few little things with the anatomy, especially like one of the hands, and I think the feet aren't quite right, but overall I think it's really good. And I'm still really happy with it, and I'm not gonna look too closely because I don't want to ruin how much I still like this one. Godric and Madeline again, and now we're seeing how Godric actually dresses in the story, but these two are just cute. I have a hard time drawing Godric's hair. I need to work on that. The big thing I remember about this one, I put so much work into the detailing on his boots. Like, you cannot see it here. And even when I zoom in on my phone, I can't see all the details of it because it's black. And the worst thing about black for costume design is it's like you lose the details. And maybe I should try making them blue or something. But there, oh yeah, I put so much work into his boots, and even hers. And hers, it's not quite as much, but hers kind of gets lost under the watermark. But I still just really like this one. This one is cute. This one. I worked so hard on this. I spent days drawing it. The little statuette, which is basically the equivalent of one of my usual illustrations, and the books that all have individual titles and gold foiling, and the shelf, and even the details on the wall, and all of that. I worked so hard on this, and I really thought that when I posted it, it was gonna get attention. I thought people would like it. I thought people would notice the work, and the fact I still think this one looks really good. And nobody liked it. No one commented on it. It got even less attention than my art usually did at the time. And I'm not even sad about it. I'm still salty because I personally believe that this piece still deserves so much more attention than it got. And maybe that's because I'm a diva, and maybe I'm biased, but I still just think this one is good, and I put so much work into it, and I don't understand why it doesn't get any acknowledgement and any attention. And don't give me the, oh, don't draw for other people, don't draw for attention. I'm happy with it. I think other people should like it too. The two things can be true at once. Also, this is a piece of concept art that was to promote my books. And I swear, I am going to keep bringing this picture back to promote my books until it gets the attention I feel it deserves. I'm gonna take a drink before I go on because I think I need to calm down. This one is uniquely frustrating, but I'll fully explain why later. Here is my Halloween pinup for 22, which was Catherine, of course. I wanted to do multiple, but Catherine was the only one that got done. This one came out pretty well. In 23, I did an update on it, which you'll see later. But the 22 was still pretty solid. Oh god, I think this one originally started in 2020. I'm fairly certain I remember starting the sketch for the one on the right in 2020. I would keep coming back to it and I would keep working on it, and I knew I wanted it to be a certain vibe. And I would struggle with it, I would draw it, I would take a break, come back to it. But then in 2022, I had the idea for the one on the left. And it's the same character, basically the same setting, just with some differences. I love this one so much. I still can't tell you why there's such a difference in the two. Maybe it's the lighting, I don't know. I feel like the one on the right just looks so simple and so undercooked compared to the one on the left. And I'm so happy with the one on the left. The dress design, the lightning. Again, this is the kind of thing that teenage me would have seen on DeviantArt in the 2000s and gone, I want to draw like that. And with this, I finally made it. After I finished the one on the left, I went back and I finished and colored the one on the right, except it's still nothing compared to the main one, which I still think is up there with some of the best stuff I've ever drawn. This one, funny story. So at the time I was working on this one, I ended up live streaming some of the drawing process while I was coloring, and the thumbnail was just a screenshot of the work in progress where I had started doing the flat colors. Specifically, I had Catherine's leg, and I don't think it had the stocking on it yet, and it definitely didn't have the dress, so there was just this human leg shape, and that was in my live stream thumbnail. And YouTube flagged it for nudity. And I'm like, YouTube, I'm trying. I think part of the whole process was putting clothes on her. And there was nothing inappropriate visible in the thing, but it still flagged it. This picture actually took a long time. I think I spent over a year working on this one. And just, work on it, take breaks, come back. Especially I remember struggling with the angle of Catherine's face, because her head is tilted away from the camera, so to speak. But I am really happy with how this one came out. I think it was definitely worth all the trouble. They're a little stiff, Madeline especially, but I do think it was starting to get back that capturing a mood that I've been talking about. This is just a fun little aside. So, Black Friday, 2022. I work in a bank. In the US, at the time I worked in the bank, in the US, banks are not allowed to be closed for more than 3 days at a time. We were closed for Thanksgiving, which meant we had to work Black Friday before being closed for the weekend. There was no one there. There was absolutely no reason to have us work that day because no one came into the bank. This is what happens when you leave song alone and bored. I took a pen that I had at my station. I was a teller. And I took it apart, and I'm looking at the ink in the little cartridge thing, and I unbend a paper clip and I stick it in the end of the ink thing just to see what happens because I was bored and apparently I'm 5 years old. Stick it in, it comes out covered in ink. Well, I have to do something with the ink, so I wipe it on a pad of sticky notes. And I'm like, oh, that looks kind of like abstract art. I stick it back in the pen, and I also ended up doing this with a second pen, one blue, one black, and this is my abstract art from Black Friday 2022, working in a bank. I just think they look kind of cool, and it was just kind of a moment in my life. I think I still have the sticky notes. I left them up on the wall for pretty much the rest of the time I was at that job, but then once I left, I took the sticky notes with me because that was my art, darn it. So, Christmas 2022, I think I actually drew this for my boyfriend as his Christmas present. It is Hammond and Heather. We haven't seen them together in a while. I think I was specifically referencing a background photo from Disney World. So they're having their Christmas kiss at Disney World. Okay, so I talked about how I feel like 2022 is when I started to see my art kind of devolve and my skills start to decline. And part of that is it's like you look at the first piece I did in 22, which is the Lucius and Ella piece that I'm still really happy with. And then the last piece I did was this Bronwyn piece, and I just don't think it's very good. One of the things I like to do, especially in December of each year, is go back over my unfinished pieces and see what I can finish before the year ends. I think this one, there was a random sketch I had. I think specifically I was like experimenting with the hair and how I was drawing the hair. But I'm just not happy with how this one came out, and this is one of those things where I feel like the last piece of the year is decidedly weaker than the first piece of the year, and maybe that's why I feel like my skill was starting to decline. Maybe it was just coincidence and how things worked out. But yeah, I'm not happy with this one. But before we finish 2022, so I finished writing Calidus Chronicles Volume 1 in 2021, and I spent 2022 writing Volume 2, but also like figuring out how to publish Volume 1 and figuring out like what I wanted that to look like. And part of that, I thought about doing decorative title pages for each story. At this point, as I'm getting ready to work on the second edition of Volume 1, I've done away with the short story format and everything is just chapters that all leads into each other. But at the time, I was gonna preserve the short story stuff. They were never really stories, just whatever. But I did title pages for each of them, and they didn't end up getting used because I couldn't figure out how to format them into the book itself. But I did them, and here are some of my favorites. I don't know if I ever actually posted these. There's 18 of them, but these are like my 9 favorite because I didn't want to overwhelm you with too many of them. I really like the looking down one with the raspberries that represent Ella, the cat for Catherine, and the ivy that represents Adis, who are the 3 characters in that part of the book. And the orchid on the evening air, really happy with that one. And of course, Aurora on the summer solstice story, which she's the Titan of the Dawn, who I drew before, and I've drawn her one more time, which you'll see later. But yeah, and like the scroll work on Love and Division and In the Arena, I just think they came out really well. And looking back at them, especially as I was putting this together, I hadn't looked at them in a while, and I'd forgotten that like they actually came out really well. And I'm a little sad I never got to do anything with them, so I might have to revisit that idea in some form later. The only one that did get used was this one, which was the title page for Volume 1 itself. And it's lots of flowers and lots of scroll work. I think it might be a bit cluttered compared to the others. I still like it. I might do something different for the second edition. Those were drawn over the course of 2022, and specifically I think in like the summer and fall. But since they weren't illustrations, I figured I would just tack them on at the end. And that brings us to the end of 2022. We have 3 years to go. And my voice is already going.